changing the subject, going from baseball, and we are turning back into the NHL because we have so much great stuff to talk about here. Gil Martin, he's got a great book, Ice Wars, that is big on New York-based rivalries in sports. Got to definitely look at it. He's joining me live now via the Global Satellite Network, presented by StreamYard. All right, so we're getting close to the trade deadline coming in on March 3rd. The Islanders made a big splash this just close to the trade deadline, but Bo Horvat, I said this. I think this was a good fit for the Islanders because of the fact of they are filling in the hole that they missed with Jordan Eberle from the expansion draft. So I think plugging him into this offense with Brock Nelson and Josh Bailey and a lot of these guys, this is maybe going to help to kind of secure that battery and that balance. How do you kind of see this playing out for the Islanders coming close to the playoffs?
I like the deal in the sense that they needed some more scoring. And to me, Bo Horvat is an Islanders kind of player because he does the little things right. He's very good on face-offs. He helps the power play, and the Islanders certainly need help on the power play as of recent weeks. He can help on the PK, and he's got leadership qualities. I mean, he was the captain in Vancouver. So I think when you add all that up and you add the fact that he just signed an 8-year extension, without the extension, I was a little skeptical about the deal. But once he signed, I think for the long term, it was a good move by the Islanders.
Yeah, I think it's a really good move, too, because of the fact of it's really helping a lot of these guys on the offense. And you're right. He's a New York Islander kind of guy. He's a guy that's full of grit. He's a guy that really never turns down an opportunity when he's got one. And at the very least, give the energy that the Islanders group really, really needs. So this was interesting of the season because end of the era for Barry Trotz. And comes the next head coach. What were your thoughts when the season before it started, how this team was really going to group up? And were they at some point going to maybe adjust and change some things that may have made them better to where they are right now?
Yeah, I mean, Lane Lambert, when he took over, and he had been an assistant under Barry Trotz going all the way back to their time in Nashville. So a long, long time he was working under Trotz as an assistant. And he said he wanted to get the defensemen a little more involved in the offense, wanted them to pinch a little bit more, to try to create a little bit more. And early in the season, that worked really well. But now, defensively, they seem to be missing a lot of assignments, and these breakdowns have been costly. So there's a little bit of a question. Look, this is his first year as an NHL head coach. To rush and judge him is, in my mind, a little bit premature. You got to at least give him the season. The thing that's sort of hanging over all of this, though, Lou Lamoriello is in the last year of his contract as Islanders GM. Does he come back next year? If he does, Lane Lambert, I think, has a better chance of staying. If he doesn't, the new GM may want to hire a new coach and bring in his own guy. And I think if the Islanders don't make the playoffs, then Lane Lambert may be on the hot seat big time.
I had when I heard the headline, or this was years ago, when they had said John Tavares is going back home to Toronto for 7 years, I said, the Islanders will look really different without John Tavares in the building. We know we had a lot of great memories with him there, up in Nassau. But I think that because of that trend, it really changed a lot of the culture of the Islanders because Anders Lee, a lot of these other young cats coming in. I've even said this too. When they traded for J.G. Padjo a couple of years ago, I said, this is probably the perfect fit because this is a balancer of a guy who could be a puck distributor. And when he has the opportunity, when the net is open on his corner, he's going to be able to shoot it. And I think that was what the Islanders looked for. So in the last couple seasons, since the John Tavares signing of Toronto, what have you seen the change in the culture of this team? Because I'm looking at it, it's energetic. I love the yes, yes, yes men that are there in the Coliseum. I mean, how great does this look for this team?
Yeah, I mean, they became more of a blue collar, where we may not be more talented than you, but we're going to outwork you kind of a team. And it worked to the extent that they went to back-to-back conference finals in the playoffs in 2020 and 2021. I think Barry Trotz was the perfect guy to implement that system. And, the Islanders became one of those teams that nobody wanted to play against, especially in a playoff series, because they wear you down. And, they always, the saying in the locker room was, we want to be a team that's difficult to play against. And when they were at their best, they really were.
Yeah, and they looked incredible. That's where I was just like, this is a sleeper team. I see them really becoming a threat in the playoffs, because watching a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference where you had, Tampa Bay is great. There's no doubt about it. But you're seeing other teams like the Hurricanes are starting to kind of knock on the door. Then you got the New York Rangers. They got Vladimir Tarasenko. So that's got to be great for New York sports media, because the fact of New York teams are really trending upward with the Islanders and Rangers, the Mets and the Yankees, and a lot of these teams. So it's great energy. And then at some point, if they get the quarterback right, we might see the Jets really make. So this has been great for New York media. But I've asked this question. I had Dan Holme on my show earlier in the first hour, and I asked him. I said, I'm watching this trend in hockey, much like I watched this trend in the NFL. Like this year, we had a lot of injuries. And it's like, you can't go a season without a really good serviceable backup quarterback. So I almost translate this to the NHL. You can't make a substantial season without a really good serviceable goaltender. What have you seen from Semyon Varlamov and for Ilya Sorokin this year that they've really played to their best potential?
Yeah, those guys are so important to the Islanders, especially since they are still, even under with the changes under Lane Lambert, a defense-first team. And Sorokin really has been outstanding. He's probably going to be a Vezina Trophy finalist. Ullmark in Boston is far away the favorite. He's going to win it, barring an injury or a complete collapse. But I think Sorokin deserves to be in the conversation, deserves to be one of the three finalists. And as far as Varlamov is concerned, he didn't have a particularly good game Saturday in Boston, but none of the Islanders did. But to be a guy who's going to play every third game and still be sharp and still keep your team in it and give them a chance to win it, as far as backup goalies go, it'd be tough to do too much better.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that just the competition around them has just really heightened up, especially not in just the Metro, but even all around in the Eastern Conference. And you're even seeing a lot of teams in the Western Conference. Like I've said this before, and you could definitely comment on this, but every year, January, February, and March, this is where you have to find your identity, and you've really got to get locked in, because there are teams that they found their identity, like the Stars defensive team. That's their identity. Pete DeBoer's really shaped that culture. The Colorado Avalanche, hyper-aggressive scoring team. That's their identity. So when you look at the identity of the Islanders, then you've seen this where they're struggling defensively. What has been the true identity, and is there something they have to adjust before the playoffs come around the corner?
Yeah, I think in the past, especially under Trotz, defense first was their primary identity. And when Lane Lambert made that change where the defensemen are going to pinch more and join the rush a little bit more, I don't know if this team has found its identity yet under Lane Lambert, because there have been so many defensive breakdowns or inconsistency, let's put it that way, more than anything else. And I think with the Bo Horvat trade, and I think Lou Lamoriello will probably make one more move before the deadline. It's not going to probably be as big as the Bo Horvat move, but I expect another move or two, that this team has to find its identity and find it quickly, because it's a very tight race in the Eastern Conference for the playoffs. And, they're one of 6 teams chasing 2 wild card spots. So if you're going to find your identity, you better do it real soon. Let's put it that way.
Oh, I agree with you there. Gil Martin joining me here on the show. So in situational, in-season situational play. So we're coming into close to the trade deadline. We know they made a big move getting Bo Horvat, and they're in the wild card spot because they're right there behind the Pittsburgh Penguins, but there's teams that are outside looking in. Buffalo, Florida, Washington. Are we quite done seeing the Islanders make moves, or is there something there that the general managing they might actually have in the cards? What are you hearing so far?
Well, I mean, the problem now is that Matthew Barzal left Saturday's game against Boston with a lower body injury. In fact, they haven't confirmed it, but it looked very much like a lower body injury. We don't know how long he's going to be out. He may even be able to play tonight. He may not. I hope to learn more at the morning skate this morning. If he's out, I don't know if it's wise for the Islanders to go all in and try to make the playoffs this year. It may be time to trade off a couple of expiring contracts, get some picks and prospects, and retool the farm system. Because the farm system has been depleted by some of the trades Lou Lamoriello has made. But if Barzal is okay, you may need a secondary scorer, and you may be looking for a puck-moving defenseman, because the Islanders have struggled with that transition game of clearing the puck out of their zone and starting the attack. So you need to sort of reaffirm that and improve that area. And if they can do that, and Barzal is healthy and Horvat integrates himself into the team, then they're competing for that playoff spot.
Yeah, I can tell you. I mean, there's been a lot of teams now. Like, there's been adjustments for some. Like, I do a segment on the show, and I'm going to be doing it here just afterward, where I did it for the Western Conference, where there's trend up, trend down, and part of that breakdown is trending up is not just winning games. It's what are you doing behind that that's allowing you to win the games. Like I said, the Golden Knights. That's nice that they're winning 5 games in a row, but how long of that streak can they keep up before the potentially, and I hope it doesn't happen, but the collapse happens? Because we've seen this with teams. They've collapsed in it, and they don't look the same come the playoff streak. And then trending down where they're struggling in areas. They've got to make some moves, and they've got to make it happen. So there's a lot of big time names that are still out there for the trade deadline to come around. I mean, Patrick Kane, Jonathan Taves, several teams. What's a name that stands out to you that you think might be a little of an X factor if he goes to one team?
2 guys that I think have the biggest impact at the trade deadline. Timo Meier of San Jose, I think, could help a lot of teams offensively. And he's still relatively young, so I think he could have a big impact if someone could sign him and line him up long term. And then as far as defenseman goes, Jeff Chikrin of Arizona, to me, they already pulled him off the ice in anticipation of a trade. That was a week ago, and he still hasn't been traded. So maybe something fell through that we don't know about. But again, both of those players in their 20s, mid 20s to late 20s, on top of their game, in their prime, and players who could have both a short-term and a long-term impact in the right place.
Yeah, I think so too, because I know Timo Meier, he's right now the big fish that's swimming in that is waiting to, figure out, is he getting traded? Because I know that that's a big asset for the offense. Wherever he might go to, he might even go to a team that they're established on offense. So when he gets plugged in, he's going to be fitting comfortably with the right situational play. And I think the chemistry will be really, really good up into the end. So explain to me a little bit of the book, Ice Wars, because I've watched New York rivalries, man, and I've been to New York 6 times in my life. Because I have family that live up in Long Island. My mother was originally from Smithtown down there in Suffolk County. And there was a time where we did go up to Nassau, see a little of that. What's the book really about? Because I love rivalries in sports. I think it's important because of the fact of it draws revenue, it draws views. So how did you explain this in the book? Because I'm kind of interested to seeing it.
Well, the book is about the history of the rivalry between the Islanders and the Rangers. And I grew up on Long Island. That was sort of my introduction to hockey because, in addition to driving revenue, which it totally does, rivalries drive passion.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about Islanders and Rangers, and I go back to the 70s and 80s and really the beginning of that rivalry, your best friend could be rooting for the other team. And you have that friendly, but not always friendly kind of a banter going back and forth. And, look, 99% of the time it's respectful, even though it's passionate.
Right.
But some of the best hockey that I saw growing up at the Nassau Coliseum, at Madison Square Garden, Rangers versus Islanders, just got me to really love the game. And so I go back and look at some of the best games, some of the best players, some of the best moments. I interviewed more than 50 players, coaches, broadcasters, and really got an in-depth perspective on the history of the rivalry, dating all the way back to the formation of the Islanders in '72.
God, and a lot of great names all amongst it. I mean, even the time when watching the growth and development of Big Z's and Chara with the Islanders, and then you fast forward and the 1 year the Rangers win with Mark Messier and a lot of those great players from there. But I love the narrative of the '80s because of the fact of the Islanders were so tough. I compared this to the Jordan against the Piston eras because, first of all, Jordan would never be able to win a championship by himself. That's just not possible. But when I watched that, watching Wayne Gretzky at his prime, I mean, the Islanders were giving him fits. And it was just like Edmonton could not get past that hump unless they were really getting the right guys, Glenn Coffey, and even for, Mark Messier and a lot of those guys up front, man. I mean, it changed a lot of the culture. And then watching the Islanders during that time when they won those four, I mean, it was a dynasty in the making. So it was great seeing a history like that with the Islanders. But I've reverted them like the Detroit Bad Boys because they were they were in your face, they were hyper-aggressive scoring, and they played great defense. And, I'd love to check this book out because watching New York sports rivalries like the Rangers and Islanders, I mean, even being a baseball guy, it's like I watched, the Yankees and Dodgers, the Dodgers and the Giants, Yankees, Red Sox. Like you love that kind of, hype atmosphere and the energy being in it. There's nothing like it. But I appreciate your time, Gil. Where can people find you on everything New York Islanders?
Well, the podcast is Locked On Islanders, wherever you get your podcasts, also on YouTube. The podcast Twitter handle is at Locked On Isles, and you can find me on Twitter at Ice Wars NYR VSNYI, which is from the title of the book.
There you go, guys. And if those of you who are diehard hockey fans and also love the New York sports rivalry and want to know more about it, check out Ice Wars with the rivalry between the Rangers and Islanders. Gil Martin is the author on that book. Great stuff. Can't wait to read it. Gil, it was a pleasure having you up on here on this President's Day weekend. Have a great and fantastic day, and we'll see what the rest of the season's going to look like come playoffs.
Hey, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love rivalries like